Well, thanks for joining me. Good morning, everyone. I'm JJ Malfettone, for those who don't know. I'm the investment lead for KPMG Ventures, and I'm thrilled to be here today to talk about my favorite topic, AI native software products. And I'm joined by 4 panelists that are all actively building or investing in the space. Now, before we get started, I just want to see from the audience here by a show of hands, is anyone building or actively built an AI native software product? All right, keep your hands up. Anyone contemplating licensing one? Keep your hands up if you're building. There you go. Anyone investing in the space? All right. And anyone sitting there going, I've got no idea what this guy's talking about? All right, so I think everyone here is probably going to find this session pretty informative. So with that, let's get this started, guys. If we can go down here on the row and just do some really quick introductions. Starting with you, Matty.
Sure. I'm Matty Beckerman, founder and CEO of IRCODE. And what we do with IRCODE, it's image recognition code. We're replacing the need for QR codes, where the image itself is the code. And it's a patented computer vision built by an engineer who was working for the Department of Defense doing drone image recognition. And so we're using it in some really interesting ways. We can make any video or image or volumetric object scannable in the real world. We're working with TV networks and out-of-home advertisers and white labeling our technology into other people's apps and giving them lens functionality, which is really pretty cool. So that's just the quick background. I've got a big history, but I'm going to leave it to everyone else.
Right.
Terrific. Thanks, Marty. Rohit Gupta. I am founder CEO of Auditoria.ai. Auditoria offers and has built a domain-specialized small language model for finance, accounting, and procurement. We build AI native solutions and applications for the office of the CFO. At the heart of our offering is what we call these AI teammates that can handle a bunch of your transactional workflows that you see in the back office, right? Whether it's in areas like collections and billing and invoicing, vendor management. We've started off in the controllership, and our objective is to be the gold standard wherever transactional work gets done in the back office. So treasury, tax, FP&A, so on and so forth. So again, glad to be here.
Amit?
Amit Patel, I'm a partner at Plug and Play Ventures. We are a global venture firm with one of the world's largest corporate innovation networks, working with firms like Nike, Walmart, Mercedes, and to support the growth and innovation activities. And one of the ways in which we do this is by helping them connect with emerging startups and scale-ups from around the world. And then we use the feedback from these interactions and we use the data points to make investment decisions. So I co-lead our fund where we're investing in early stage companies across enterprise software, AI, and financial services.
And I'm Tushar Shah. I'm the Chief Product Officer of Uniphore. Uniphore is a business AI company. What that means is we deliver a global platform to enterprise companies that really merge both the CIO and their business leaders to deliver on their AI capability through very much a sovereign, composable, and secure platform where both the data, the knowledge, the models, and the agentic layers capabilities can be delivered at the enterprise level across multiple different use cases.
Cool. Thanks, guys. So I first want to start by level setting. I mean, obviously, software is going through a pretty big shift right now, right? AI native software products, they feel like traditional SaaS. But as you guys know, there's some very big differences. So let's just start by defining the territory. In your mind, what makes a product truly AI native as opposed to just AI enabled? Matty, let's start with you again.
Sure. I mean, the definition of it is you've built a product that is built on AI as your backbone. It's not like something you're then plugging into it. So new startups today, I think like 90% of them are going to be AI companies, actually built with AI, and that's the purpose of it. Rather than a traditional type of company who are then adapting AI into their current services. So I think that's the basic definition of it.
Yeah. Rohit, anything to add?
Yeah, I'll add a couple of other dimensions. If I think of like attributes that represent AI native products, right? It is the ability to have dynamic contextual workflows that are powered by AI that's at the heart of the application itself, right? It's the ability to engage with unstructured data in a contextual manner, right? These are some of the interaction patterns that we find that are specific for AI native applications. The other piece is the user experience and the user interaction layer. I mean, we've all grown up in the SaaS world where there's menus and buttons and click-throughs and such, whereas you now move into a world where you're essentially, for lack of a better word, operating with either large language models or specialized language models, and you're interacting with applications, either with prompts or with just basic English. And that as an interaction pattern is again specific here. And so, these AI native products, AI native applications, they truly give you the opportunity to deliver on the promise of full autonomy. Right? The human in the loop is always important, and depending on the type of industry you're in, it I think becomes more important. But they give you the ability to deliver on the promise of autonomy without compromising on accuracy, integrity, and such. And so that's how I think of AI native applications. And then of course you see this in day-to-day examples, right? I think of Gamma on the consumer side as an AI native application for building slides, and then I've got AI-enabled ones like PowerPoint and such.
Right. Yep.
And such. Yeah. So I look at sort of those, or Notion versus Google Docs and things of that sort. But anyways.
I'll piggyback off what you said because I completely agree, because what you've basically just outlined is that you're not just using AI as a layer, like it's actually in your value proposition. Right? Like it wouldn't exist if you didn't have the workflows and the data advantages. One thing I'll also say though is that where I probably deviate a little bit is I feel like this question doesn't really matter now in the sense that almost, I sit in on thousands of pitches, like in front of customers as an investor, and every company is an AI company today.
Yep.
We're going to help you solve the world. We're going to do X, Y, Z, solve all your problems. So the real question isn't, are you AI native? The real question is, to what you said, do you have the data advantage, right? Do you have the deep workflow integrations and whatnot? And I'll give you an example. Like, I was telling you this, JJ, the other day that, I was having dinner with a chief AI officer of a top 5 bank recently, and I had introduced him to 5 companies that kind of afternoon. He had met them, and I asked him, I said, hey, which company stood out to you? And he said, he liked 3 out of the 5, but the one that stood out to him the most is the one company that did not mention AI in their presentation at all. It was not mentioned even once. And I know they're all AI companies because I helped set up the meeting. He said, I don't know if they did that intentionally, because or if it was by accident, but because they did not mention AI, they're the ones that stood out to me. So the real question is you need to target your conversations more towards the problems that you're solving as opposed to just saying, I'm an AI company. Because guess what? They've heard it thousands of times from other places.
It's AI pitch fatigue.
Yeah, there is an AI pitch fatigue for sure.
So I think this gives us a good grounding of what makes a product AI native.
Yeah.
Tushar, I'm gonna kick this next one over to you first. Let's talk about how that actually impacts the way we design and build around AI from day one, right? So how does it shift things in the back office, right? From product design to engineering to how you organize your teams.
Yeah,
right?
it's a great question, and what we've seen, and I'll give you some examples. Essentially, at this point, any level of requirements document, PRD, essentially, we're leveraging a large language model to help us think about the art of the possible. We're essentially leveraging that as essentially a judge against what might have been written by a human. Clearly, on the design side, that's all essentially now being driven by essentially both user feedback, but ultimately leveraging Lovable and other types of tool sets like that have been mentioned up here. And the other thing that we really started taking to hold is we're now having product managers and engineers, like one-on-one, sit in potentially sales interactions and conversations, and post those sales calls, they'll actually do vibe-based engineering off of what they heard. Because in the end, when you build a great product, it's about what you're hearing your customers want. And so the ability to actually get now product and engineering to sit in a sales engagement when you pitch your platform and you talk about your layers and your capability, and then they start giving you ideas about problems that they're trying to solve and how your platform might solve them. We've seen even that last week. Like, we had some folks actually from KPMG last week, and we talked about a use case. The next day, we actually showed you a prototype. We showed the KPMG a prototype of that product. And we got immediate feedback on, hey, this is what we heard you say. Here's what the actual application or the agent will look like. And we got immediate feedback that said, yeah, this is correct. Can we make these types of tweaks? Yep. And then ultimately, what happens is, because we built it the enterprise, we then take that and figure out how we're going to go ahead and scale that. And we think about what else have we heard from other customers that were looking for that same type of agent capability, and we build on top of it. So that's actually how we've actually changed the game around, and how we're leveraging, for example, vibe computing in our ecosystem at Uniphore.
Interesting. So you guys are really shortening the cycles on the build.
But we're also making sure that we get that direct, like, we're not doing it in a vacuum. We're taking customer feedback or input into what we're designing and developing.
Yeah.
One thing I want to add to that as well, actually, because and it came from the conversation that you and I had a couple of days ago, and and I, like, in the VC community, there's like a perspective around, like, the next level of, like, big AI apps are going to have a system of record. And you kind of challenged me on this, and I said, and because then that's based on your own experience, right? You said, like, actually the customers we talk to don't want us to have a system of record because they already have databases. They just want to know that we can truly work with unstructured, like, pipelines. You can convert those. So the next generation apps, when you think about product design, you need to be able to architect your stack to be able to account for the unstructured data instead of the usual clean relational stuff. So I thought that was good. So I'm going to go back and speak to our partners and see kind of, what does that mean? Because that's a big VC assumption. The second thing I would kind of say is, from a product design perspective, while everyone's trying to build, AGI and the next gen autonomous systems, the enterprise, they're not ready to kind of implement fully autonomous systems. I know Nathaniel showed a survey this morning. He said, like, how about half of the companies are looking at both revenue generating and I think operational efficiency. But if you go one level deeper, actually, it is the smaller companies that are actually looking at revenue generation. Larger enterprises are still looking at purely at operational efficiency. So go one level deeper, and that's been from my interactions with the 500 plus companies that we work with. They're only exploring for intelligent use cases because they don't want fully autonomous agents running out in the wild. So when you're designing products, I would actually say you need to think about the human in the loop. You need to have that consciously in your design framework, and where do they fit in? Because I don't think enterprises will feel comfortable to have fully autonomous agents in their environments.
Yeah, I think you touched on something perfect, which is you're shortening that time to put a product out and then iterate on it. Immediately. We've eliminated so many steps in that process. I no longer go to Figma first. I now go directly to a vibe coding app and eliminate that entire process that takes us from months of trying to develop something down to a weekend. And that's how startups survive, is by putting a product out, iterating quickly, seeing what changes you need to make, and then making those changes as fast as possible. And that's what is changing everything. I think the next version of the bigger companies that we currently see is a 19-year-old kid sitting in his parents' basement, vibe coding something that just revolutionizes the world.
Isn't that already happening?
Happening. Yeah, that is it. But instead of having to hire this giant dev team, they're just doing it on their own.
Yeah. Interesting.
One-person AI startups.
Yeah. So, Rohit, I want you to opine on this question as well. But I know Auditoria also runs on data, right? Data is key to automating finance processes. So maybe you can also talk about how you guys really go about securing access to that data that you need.
Yeah, look, I think there's a couple of dimensions here. The point that Amit brought about in the context of the human in the loop, it is absolutely critical. It is imperative, particularly in the office of the CFO, which is by definition a risk-averse, skeptical, conservative buying center. Think about this. If you are 80% accurate or 85% accurate, you could probably get away with that in sales and marketing, maybe on some front office applications. But if you're in finance, and let's say that your CFO asked you to reconcile a statement with about 100 invoices, and you're accurate with about 80% of them, how's that going to look? You're going to be laughed out of town, right? So the bar for what these applications, the expectation for these services in the office of the CFO where we play is significantly higher. And so the human in the loop design pattern is absolutely imperative. And so one of the things that we do is it's an implementation best practice. We've embraced the concept of forward deployed engineers. And as we talk about, if you will, the notion of organizational design, just as we hear about product and engineering, there's another element of it, and that is how do you help customers embrace and adopt these services? So forward deployment engineering plays an important role. It's the opportunity, if you will, to help companies, help customers, help end users embrace these services, use human-in-the-loop design patterns to assess how the technology does within their data sets. And then effectively, and selectively turn on autonomy. Not every use case is ready for full autonomy. Some use cases might be. And there are companies that are out there that say that, hey, for certain types of constituents, let's say that, if you're an enterprise that essentially has got your top 20 companies that represent, 30% of your revenue, you probably want AI maybe to play a role there, but you probably want a human form factor in every one of those interactions.
They were talking about the last panel having an AI off switch.
There we go. And so this notion, if you will, of having human in the loop that supplements or complements autonomy, I think is critical. It's something that we've embraced, we've introduced as a fundamental design pattern as companies have embraced our products.
I think that aligns with much of our thinking at KPMG as well. Listen, so I think this gives us a good understanding of what's kind of going on, in the back of the house. Let's move to the front of the house now. I mean, from a go-to-market perspective, AI native software products have really been forging a new path, right? And that always comes with some growing pains, some challenges. Just take pricing, for instance. It's been difficult in many scenarios. Customers are not used to the way that these companies are pricing their product, right? So that's new to us. Market differentiation is becoming much more difficult because, to your point, Matty, anyone can create a product now, right? So there's so much noise out there. So how are you guys dealing with those roadblocks and trying to cut through that noise? Rohit, I was going to say.
I can take a first pass at it. The way we've approached it is we've embraced the concept of both usage and outcome-based pricing, to use pricing as a starting point of these conversations, right? The reality is customers want to pay for outcomes. I don't want to say gone are the days of seat-based pricing and things of that sort. I think there's still a little bit of that out there, but I think this is fast changing. And so utilization, usage-based pricing models that are then supplemented by outcomes essentially is where we see the world headed. And I think for AI native solutions, that is something to be ready for. I do say, though, that pricing is one element of it. There's other aspects of it from a go-to-market perspective as well, and that is, how do you help with the whole change management side of the house, right? In a large enterprise, in a large regulated enterprise, if you think that for a moment that, hey, there's a cool new startup out there, we think we're pretty cool, we're new, but it's one of these where you can just come in and the CIO is going to allow you to plug in your AI into their production ERP system or their production mission critical system that transacts billions of transactions a day or what have you, fat chance that's going to happen. So you've got to identify how you essentially introduce this in a limited data set, maybe a single entity, with a limited set of constituents, showcase progress, have very clear success metrics, and then a path to be able to progressively expand that. Doesn't sound like rocket science, but it is something that is absolutely critical for AI native services.
Yeah, so I think what we looked at is because we deal with the enterprise and who ultimately you're dealing with from a contract perspective are vendor managers, right? And so you need to make sure when you think about pricing, how do you effectively make sure that they can do an apples-to-apples comparison, and because they may not know the complexities of token usage and all of that. So we, like just everybody else, I think we're moving toward that consumption-based model. People are familiar from a hyperscaler perspective. Obviously, Databricks, Snowflake use a consumption-based approach as well. So I think you're seeing a lot of probably companies that are now this AI native and delivering AI capability moving to that consumption-based approach. I think the other thing you're also seeing with the go-to-market perspective is clearly the sales organization, sales engineering. We talk a lot about like product and engineering, but even those talented, capable resources all have to be taught and learned, because we talked about, right? The buying center is kind of shifting, or potentially now you have both the CIO and the actual line of business leader in the room, and you got to be able to talk with essentially both directions. And so what you're seeing now is a lot more companies that are delivering AI capabilities, scaling up a forward deployment engineering organization. Obviously, Palantir led the way, but now you see, we have a similar structure now in place. You see OpenAI just, within like the last 10 days announced a group. So you're seeing that essential augmentation now of your sales and your sales engineering team also now having an FDE team, because that'll really help them drive the actual transformation or see the value of the outcomes you can deliver.
Yep. Matty, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, we just did a deal very similarly to like revenue split. We just did a deal with one of the bigger out-of-home advertising companies to make all their billboards scannable. And the way we did it was we said, we'll implement all the technology and we will do a revenue split and a CPM markup based on that. So if we're successful, you're successful, we make money with you alongside of you. We're a little different because we're both B2B and B2C.
Yep.
So it's a little different than enterprise sales directly.
Yep.
But we're working with those customers to say, man, I know this is new technology. Let's forge a way together and let's do this together. And I think that makes people easy to work with.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Amit, I want you to have a chance to opine on this, because at Plug and Play, you're the most active VC by deal count globally, right? So you guys are seeing a ton of deals in your pipeline. You've invested in a number of these companies too, right?
Yeah.
So, from an investor perspective, what overarching trends are you seeing from, a best practice standpoint, from a go-to-market standpoint with these companies?
From a best practice perspective, since everyone touched on outcome usage, I think the most important factor over there is aligning your metrics, right? Aligning your metrics that you can control. So from a startup perspective, like, I sometimes give this example, like in like Google and Facebook, like, they charge you on cost per clicks, not on cost per conversion, because if your product doesn't resonate, if your messaging is not pretty bad, that's out of their control. So I think those metrics need to be under your control if you're going to align it with value generated, and that needs to be very tangible. Second, what we've noticed is that it's 2025, it's the year of AI agents. And interestingly, most of the agentic kind of requests we've been getting is actually from CFOs. So CFOs have asked for it because they're probably seeing real tangible impact from AI agent adoption. Now, while we talk about things like productivity, efficiency, quite frankly, they're fluffy metrics. CEOs and CFOs, what they care about, how does that translate into my P&L? And so more and more, we're seeing the buyer move up. Like I was talking to one of your portfolio companies, Anecdote, and I was asked in the security space, and I was asking, like, who's your ICP? And they said, well, we're not targeting CISOs. We're targeting everyone below CISOs, use them as our champion, and then go up to the CISO who holds a budget, purse strings. Here, at the moment in 2025, the functional leaders are actively looking for it and actively have budgets that they want to deploy. And so when you're in front of them, you need to align the metrics that speaks to them, right? Like, how is it going to improve their P&L or their function directly? Second thing I would also say, in the same conversation with the same company, is I'm seeing some startups hire horizontal GTMs, whereas it should be horizontal first, vertical later, right? So go deep in a given function, go deep in a workflow, dominate it, and then generalize outwards. It kind of goes against kind of the new favorite kind of compound startups where like you tackle things in parallel. But with the way that the decision making is made in enterprises, it is better to go vertical first.
Interesting. Just to counter that, perhaps, I mean, Tushar, I know you guys, you're not necessarily a vertical AI company. You actually are a horizontal company.
Correct.
And you guys have been successful in doing that. So, I mean, any thoughts on how you guys have been able to go horizontal first?
Yeah, so I think if you think about our history, right, we grew up kind of in that CS space, so we're somewhat vertical. But what we did was over the last 18 months is we've talked to over 100 CEOs and CTOs. What we heard was, for example, don't be a system of record if you're going to go build a platform. But also what we heard was, because we're now on multiple different hyperscalers, there are use cases, for example, that are still sitting on bare metal, especially if you're in the regulatory space. Help us essentially build a platform and a capability that we can deploy across multiple different clouds, but also be open, because we might select a vertical solution for our CFO coming from Rohit's company, for example. And so, for example, the composability of our architecture, for example, we could consume Rohit's small language model into our model layer. So that, once again, talking to customers, understanding what their pain points were, that's how we kind of went towards that whole horizontal approach, but knowing that you're going to have to solve vertical use cases, but making sure that you build a platform that's not a wall garden, but essentially is that kind of sovereign and composable, so that you can ultimately meet the enterprise's use cases where they need you to be.
Got it, yeah. All right, I'm going to go a little lofty here with this next one. Everything we've talked about, I mean, clearly this has been a big shift, right, in software. So whenever we go through these types of disruptions, it's always a chance to rethink the way we do things, right? Really challenge the norms. So in your mind, what new use cases do AI native, or what new doors do AI native software products open for us? Or perhaps a different way I could phrase this is, what challenges, what old assumptions do they challenge, right? And Matty, maybe we can start with you on that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, 6 months ago, I was still hiring a creative agency to take weeks to build something for me, and then it would come back and it wouldn't be what I wanted, and then I would spend a ton of money doing that. And now we just do it directly. We're actually building prototypes and things that actually work immediately, rather than spending money, not getting what we want, having a creative agency like mess up the concept of it. And we've kind of eliminated those steps and just go straight to it. I mean, I was in the music business. I started a record label in my dorm room in college, and we sold a ton of records, and then I ended up selling to a division of Capitol Records when I was still in my 20s. But that was right when Napster had hit, right? So I equate it to this. Nobody knew that the music business would be completely ravaged by this. Like, I didn't have any foresight. I just was able to exit my company at a good moment. But it's like, this is Napster on steroids to change the entire face of how we do business. And every dev at my company are embracing those tools every moment now. And it took me a while to get them to see it. I had to sit there and force them to do it, because they're brilliant coders, but they're threatened by coding with AI and using those pieces. Once you get them past it, it's like their best friend. Suddenly they're hyper productive, hyper efficient, and creating things in record time. And it's still a challenge, right? Because some of the models are still not perfect. Hallucinations and things that change. And we constantly have to fix them, going into the code and actually making them work when it hallucinates something crazy. But that's where I see everything going. It's getting better and better. I mean, the new edition of Lovable is 90% better than it was 3 months ago. So when you dig in, it's starting to increase and just get better with time. And I think if you're not thinking about this, then you're already behind.
Yeah. Right?
I'll just say that the impact of AI is across every dimension of the organization. Marty talked about engineering and development. We see this everywhere in sales, right? AI SDRs here to stay. Customer support. It's no longer just taking tickets and logging issues and service requests and such. It is about managing hallucinations, figuring out model drift, things of that sort. New dimensions that are that are here to stay. And so it is this new organization. It's the new world in which you're AI native, not only from a technology perspective, but also how you essentially support your clients.
We're building our own internal SaaS systems. I mean, customer support. We'll just code something in a weekend to support it and eliminate using Zendesk entirely. And those are the types of things we're doing. that now, as a startup, you're worried about your capital, you're worried about your cash and your runway. And if I could build something in a weekend that's actually more customizable, it's a game changer for us.
I think it challenges two assumptions. One is the most obvious one: we don't need to scale with headcount, right? We're seeing companies reach 50 to 100 million in annual recurring revenue with less than 40 employees. Even in the enterprise setting, right? When you talk to senior executives, they take a big pride. I oversee 1,500 people, 5,000 people. And so the old way of moving up the ladder was, how many people do you manage? I think that's going to change even at the enterprise level. It's not how many employees do you manage, it's employees plus agents, right? So you need to start thinking about scaling with less people now too as well.
Yep.
The second assumption I think is being challenged, and this is from a venture perspective, is in the old days, don't invest in service business, right? It's not scalable, don't do it. Palantir flipped that model, and to your point around forward deployed, you made that around forward deployed engineers, is services is a massive market. So a lot of the new companies that we're seeing actually recently are, they're already embedding services components around their products. And so because that now expands their market size. So because everybody wants to be the Palantir of their, the function or the vertical that they're targeting. And so services is good now. And so even you talked about earlier around organizational design or product design, people are thinking about, what is that for deployment engineering think about? One thing I will add, the reason why that's important is because while everyone is trying to get to AGI and build the next shiny object, the enterprise architecture is still legacy. Like, that hasn't changed. And so if your product does not integrate well with the workflows, you're not getting off the ground. I actually think a substandard product that has amazing connectors, amazing integration, they'll probably have a higher chance of winning a new customer than the best AI product with the best model, the best data advantage. One example I can give is Glean. Glean is not the first knowledge management system. There are plenty of others. We've even invested in one in a separate company. The feedback that I got from the folks that have adopted Glean is that they've built out amazing connectors. They can integrate really well within our legacy enterprise side, that custom kind of integrations that we need. And so I think every new company, even existing companies, if you want to build a moat, start building out your integration capabilities.
So guys, we are unfortunately out of time. I want to thank you. This was fantastic. And if anyone wants to ask these guys some questions, we will be outside. Thank you very much.
Thank you.